Now I believe, and I dare not sound arrogant, but I just about know there's a word from the Lord for his people. I want to turn your attention, and I'm not even going to say it briefly, because I noticed over the years that when I made a concerted effort to be brief, it looked like it never turned out quite that way. I had prepared a message that was about 10, 11 minutes long, and then 35 minutes later I took my seat. So I won't even say I'm going to be brief today, but I hope not to be too long, and I hope and pray not to worry and try your patience. I want to turn, if you would, to the 12th chapter of the Gospel according to Matthew. I will read verses 43 through 45. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places seeking rest, and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Then goeth he, and taketh with himself 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be unto this wicked generation. And I want to use for a subject, doing our part to keep the devil homeless. Doing our part to keep the devil homeless. Few things bring to our hearts the sadness when we feel when we look upon the pitiable condition of someone who is experiencing homelessness. The sight of another human being pushing shopping carts with the totality of their earthly belongings in that cart. Unkept, disheveled, sometimes manifesting conditions of mental disorders, sleeping in tents. And I will never forget some years ago, I had always wanted to visit San Diego. Have you ever seen things on TV and in postcards and in magazines, and you said, one day I'm going to visit there? And that was my goal, living on the East Coast all of my adult life. I want to go to San Diego. And when I go to San Diego, I want to go see the Padres play. That's the baseball team, y'all. I drove into San Diego, what I had seen to be a beautiful city. And as soon as I came off the expressway in downtown San Diego, all I saw was block after block after block of tents filled with the homeless. And my exhilaration over being able to check this off my bucket list and visit San Diego, now just a few blocks from the ballpark, tears began to well up in my eyes as I looked in the rearview mirror and saw all of those tents I had just passed. The homeless sleeping in tents when I moved to Los Angeles. Oh my God, I live downtown. But just blocks away from the gleaming high rises, from the magnificent works of architecture, were the wandering homeless. And then, as I was on my way somewhere, I came across a street, and it was totally engulfed by nothing but homeless people on each side of the street. I went and told one of my members the experience and said, Pastor, what you did, you had wandered into Skid Row. And it was heartbreaking. People with no address to call their own and nowhere to lay their heads inside. Forgive me for being confounded by how such conditions can be prevalent in a nation as materially affluent as America. Not Bangladesh, but America. Not in the jungles of South Africa, but in America. How can this be? And there be no collective will to effectively and permanently address the issue of homelessness. This man has put a man on the moon and can't address homelessness. Before they killed him, I was told by people in intelligence that even when he went to the bathroom, the United States government knew how many pieces of toilet paper that Gaddafi was using. How you know all of that and have all that expertise and can't do nothing about homelessness right here in America? Politicians love to praise and pay homage to those men and women who will risk their lives fighting for this country in distant lands. But when these same soldiers and these same sailors come home having experienced only God knows what on those battlefields, these same politicians sit and stand idly by as many of them are relegated to the eventuality of being numbered among the homeless. This, in my opinion, is a sin and a shame. A low-down, dirty shame. I wonder how the wealthy of this nation, having net worths in the billions of dollars, can reside in their gated communities, ride around in Rolls Royces, Bentleys, Porsches, Teslas, Aston Martins, Lamborghinis, and all other ridiculously expensive automobiles, and not be of the mind to pool their resources to put an end to this scourge and affliction in this land. Today, however, I stand before you as an advocate of a form of homelessness every Christian should strive to make a reality in our lives. I've come to suggest today that we engage in doing our part in keeping the devil homeless. Our text in this 12th chapter of Matthew paints a picture of a demon having been expelled from a man's house of life. That demon is now wandering in a state of homelessness. This man's house of life has been, according to the scripture I read earlier, swept clean. No longer is this house inhabited by the demonic spirit. Nothing is present in the house. Nothing. The house is empty. This man, no doubt, is happy because his house is now free of the demonic influence. However, the demon knows something that apparently the man does not know. And that is, an empty house of life is a dangerous house of life to possess. I'm going to say it again. The demon knew. See, don't you think the devil is a fool now? The devil knew what the man did not know. While he was happy that he was free of the demonic spirit, the devil knew that an empty, somebody say empty, that an empty house is dangerous to inhabit. Let's look in at the text. When the devil returns to his former residence, he finds that all the mess and junk and clutter that was there when he lived there is gone. However, nothing has replaced what was in the house where the devil used to reside. Now, as the demon peers through the windows and looks inside of this house, he looks into an environment of emptiness, nothingness. And he comes up with a bright idea. He remembers that when he got evicted from the house, he was by himself. Hello, somebody. Therefore, he decides, according to the scripture, to go out and get some reinforcements. And after doing so, he and his reinforcements will come back and re-enter that house. According to the text, he goes out and finds, quote, 7 spirits more wicked than himself. And then all 8 of them enter in to the empty house. And we are told that what? The last state of that man's house is worse than the first. Let us hear what this text is trying to tell us today. It is showing us that before we came to Christ, our house of life was a mess. Don't you fool yourself. Before you came to Christ and before I came to Christ, our house of life was a mess, cluttered, filled with all sort of junk that did not rightly belong in our houses. But when we made a decision to invite Christ into our house of life, the devil no longer had his sway over us. He no longer had the influence and power over us that he once had. When we came to Christ, we had a message for the devil. You got to go. You got to get out of here. You don't live here anymore. That crazy stuff you had me doing and saying and going, I won't be doing that foolishness no more. You made a mess of my life long enough. No more. And we sing that little song to the devil. Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. Hey, hey, goodbye. As we think back to the moment, there was great joy. We're determined to serve and praise and worship the Lord for the rest of our lives. By grace and through faith, the devil has been put out of our house of life. We have taken that all-important first step. Somebody said first step. Somebody said it, first step. But the process is not complete. This text is saying to us that there is yet more that must be done. For the devil-made mess may be gone, but the emptiness left behind must be addressed. The house is not supposed to be messy and dirty with everything out of place, but neither is the house to be filled with nothing but emptiness. This text makes us aware of the consequences of taking that all-important first step, but failing to engage in the necessary follow-up to keep the devil at bay and not allow his re-entry into the house from which he has been expelled. I'm going to say that again for somebody, because I should have got more than 2 amens out of that. This text is showing us the consequences of taking that all-important first step, but failing to engage in the necessary follow-up to keep the devil at bay and not allow him to re-enter a space from which he has been expelled. That we need to follow up with that which will keep the devil out. Well, why is that so important? The text tells us, because he's coming back again. Hello, somebody? Some of you all didn't start catching hell until you gave your life to the Lord. As long as you out there shaking, as long as you out there using profanity, as long as you out there business person engaged in shady activity, all looked like you were doing all right. You were floating through life on a flowery bed of ease. But one day or one night, you decided to give your life to Christ. Some preacher may have misspoke. Some saints may have misspoke and told you that now you've given your life to Christ, everything is going to be fine in your life. You just go have everything is going to fall in place in your life. But some of us learn sometimes the hard way that it wasn't until we decided to live for the Lord that we made the devil so mad he started coming at us for everything. We have to understand that we cannot get so happy that the demonic influence is gone that we don't address the emptiness left behind. That we need to follow up and I keep coming back to this, keep the devil out, keep the devil out, keep the devil out, keep the devil out. He's out, keep him out. I said to somebody today that when you give your life to Christ and he comes into your heart and the devil is expelled from your life, you better be doing everything you can to keep him out of your life. Because if you don't keep him out of your life, he's going to come back again. He's going to come back with his reinforcements, and if you are not ready, he's going to be like Fred Flintstone. Y'all remember Fred Flintstone, don't you? Well, some of these young folk may not be old enough to remember old Fred and Dino. But every time that cartoon would come on and go off, you would find Fred taking stuff out of the house and putting it outdoors. Then he put Dino outdoors. But Dino had other thoughts. He said, I belong in that house, I ain't getting out. And you know that Dino put Fred out. And Fred is standing out there knocking on the door. Let me in, let me in. Let me tell you, the devil will put you out of your house and have you standing at the door and me standing at the door saying, let me in. If you get him out, you better keep him out. Oh, because he's coming back with a vengeance. He's coming back now. He ain't going to be by himself. He's going to have reinforcements, even more wicked. I said, even more wicked. You thought he's bad, but boy, look what I'm bringing with me now, says the devil. So this is why so many Christian people are living lives of defeat and not reflecting the power and productivity in their lives that they should be manifesting. Why, preacher? Because they dropped their guard. They underestimated the enemy they were dealing with. There are some teams in March Madness who are going home as I speak because they underestimated. We are seeded number one. There's nothing a number 16 seeded team can do but be fodder for us to beat the devil out of on our way to the next team. But a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Somebody forgot to tell the number 16 seeded team that they were not supposed to beat the number 1 seeded team. And at the end of the game, when the buzzer went off, you found the number 16 team jumping up and down for joy, and the number 1 seeded team, the thrill of victory, but the agony of defeat. You can't underestimate. I used to tell my teammates sometimes when we were playing a team that we were supposed to beat, and everybody lollygagging in the locker room before the game, everybody talking about what we're going to be doing after the game. I said, you Negroes, and I won't use the real word I used to them, we got a game to play. And yes, we're supposed to win, but those guys over there, they have on uniforms too. They practice too. They have a coach too. And they're not just going to roll over and play dead just because the mighty Eagles are on the floor. And I'm saying to somebody, don't you underestimate the power of the devil. Because once you underestimate him, he got you exactly where he wants you. The house is no longer filled with the devil's furniture. But the danger now is the house is filled with emptiness. The devil's furniture is not there, but nothing else either. Nothing. And a house filled with nothing but air is a strange place to live. And in this case, it becomes an outright dangerous place to live. After giving, and I'm almost through, keyword almost. After giving their lives to Christ, some people may do good deeds and go out of their way to not deliberately bring harm to other people. But I've come to tell you that this is not enough to make the house of life what it needs to be. Some people may memorize a Bible verse or two, or three, or four, but I've come to tell you that this is not enough to make the house what it needs to be. Some people may be involved in the life of the congregation and be well thought of in the church, but I've come to tell you that this is not enough to make the house what it needs to be. They may feel good about the fact that the house is not as messy as it used to be. But I've come to tell you that's not enough to ensure that the house is furnished with what it takes to repel the devil upon his attempt to re-enter. I am going to my seat now. But after receiving Christ into our lives, we have to make sure and very sure that we fill our house of life, now empty of the things of the devil, with things that I call, get this now, tried, true, and tested devil keeper outers. Oh, y'all hear what I said? Tried, true, and tested devil keeper outers. We must replace the old furnishings with new furnishing. Well, let me make a list for somebody. One piece of furniture must be shown up close faith walk with the Lord. Another piece of furniture must be Bible-based, inspired spirit or prayer life. Another piece of furniture must be serious and consistent study of the Word of God, so that we will not be among the multitudes of I go to church folk suffering from the dreaded disease of biblical illiteracy. Another piece of furniture must be faith-inspired determination to be a shining light to make our communities better places to live. Therefore, I implore somebody today to inspect your house of life. Make sure that after having made the decision to accept Christ and having your house of life swept clean of demonic influence, that space is not filled with mere emptiness, but filled with the necessary furnishings to keep out the devil that has been put out. Fill the house with love for God, self, and others. Fill the house with obedience to the commands of God. Fill the house with thanksgiving and gratitude for all that God has done. Fill the house with praises going up. Fill the house with patience. Fill the house and not rest upon our laurels of our initial decision, but to continually be about the business of furnishing